We are done with first three sections. Now let's look into section 4, which is describe the capabilities of Microsoft Compliance Solution. Let's expand this. There are 5 subsections in this. Let's start with the first subsection, which is compliance management capabilities in Microsoft. So just a reminder, the top bar shows under which section we are. So we are in the last section, which is Microsoft Compliance Solution, and we are covering the first subsection in that, which is compliance management capabilities in Microsoft. On the left hand side, we list the topics, and as we navigate through, we will keep our focus on the current topic which we are targeting so that you have a good understanding on where we are. So let's start with the first topic, which is offering of Service Trust Portal. In Service Trust Portal, we have Compliance Manager, which measures the progress in completing action that helps reduce risk around data protection and regulatory standards. Trust Documents, Industry and Regions, contains compliance information about Microsoft Cloud Services organized by industry and region. Trust Center, resources, my library. In Service Trust Portal, we get everything in one place. You can also opt to have email notifications sent when a document is updated and set the frequency you receive this notification. So it is just the high level, what are the offerings. We are going to get into all of these in detail. Let's talk about next, which is Microsoft privacy principle. So Microsoft focus on 6 key privacy principles when making decisions about data. Control, transparency, security, strong legal protection, no content-based targeting, and benefit to you. So when it's a control, that means putting you, the customer, in control of your privacy with easy to use tools and clear choices. Transparency means being transparent about data collection and use so that everyone can make informed decisions. Security, protecting the data that entrusts to Microsoft by using strong security and encryption. Strong legal protection. That means respecting local privacy laws and fighting for legal protection of privacy as a fundamental human right. No content-based targeting, not using email, chat, files, or other personal content to target advertising. And benefits are used. When Microsoft does collect data, it's used to benefit you, the customer, to make your experience better. So these are the 6 key privacy principles which Microsoft focuses on. Next one is Compliance Center. So Microsoft 365 Compliance Center brings together all of the tools and data that are needed to help understand and manage an organization compliance need. It is available with Microsoft 365 SKU for customer with one of the following rules. It could be global admin, compliance data admin. And when the admin sign in to Microsoft 365 Compliance Center portal, they get a bird eye view of how organization is meeting its compliance requirement, along with a solution that can be used to help their compliance information about active alerts and all. So it's a one-stop place where they can see how the organization is meeting the compliance and what is the corrective actions they can do. This on the right hand side shows how the compliance center looks like. It's the home page, contains several cards, including compliance scorecard. You can see on the center of that image, there is a compliance scorecard showing 69% compliance. And the new solution catalog card links the collection of integrated solutions that can be used to manage end-to-end compliance scenarios. So here on the right-hand side, there is a solution catalog which integrate to solution. For example, the information protection and governance, insider risk management, discovery and response section. We're going to cover those also in detail. And the active alerts card includes a summary of the most active alerts on the bottom right. It is shown if there are active alerts. Those are also shown in the Compliance Center. Now, Compliance Center Manager is a feature in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center that helps admin to manage an organization compliance requirement with great ease and convenience. The manager helps simplify compliance and reduces risk by providing pre-built assessment. So based upon the common region and industry regulation and standard, it provides pre-built assessment. It provides workflow capabilities that enable admin to efficiently complete risk assessment for the organization. Step-by-step improvement action that admin can take to help meet regulation and standards relevant to the organization. And compliance score, as we saw already, which is a calculation that helps an organization understand its overall compliance posture by measuring how it is progressing with the improvement actions. So this is how the compliance manager dashboard looks like. It is showing the compliance score on the center, and also it is showing the key improvement activities on the right hand side. Now, what is the benefit of compliance manager? Translating complicated regulations, standard and compliance policies into a simple language. It provides access to a large variety of out-of-box assessment and custom assessment to help organizations with their unique compliance need. Mapping regulatory control against recommendation of improvement actions. providing step-by-step guidance on how to implement the solution to meet regulatory requirement, helping admins and users to prioritize action that will have the highest impact on their organization compliance by associating a score with each action. So this way it helps admin and users. So we talked about this a lot, compliance score. Now what is compliance score? So compliance score measures progress in completing recommendation improvement action within control. The score can help an organization to understand its current compliance posture. It also helps organization to prioritize action based on their potential to reduce risk. Admins can get a breakdown of compliance score in the compliance manager overview pane. As you can see on the right hand side, it is showing the compliance score breakdown, and it is showing a button under each of these view improvement actions. So it can tell if you do that action, your compliance score will improve. So a little bit more about how to understand the compliance score. The overall compliance score is calculated using scores that are assigned to action. The action comes in two types: your improvement action or Microsoft action. Your improvement actions are those that the organization is expected to manage, and Microsoft actions are actions that Microsoft manages for the organization. And type of actions could be mandatory or discretionary. The mandatory action you should not be bypassed. For example, creating a policy to set a requirement for password length or expiration. That's a mandatory action. On the other hand side, discretionary, these action depends on the user understanding and adherence to the policy. For example, a policy where users are required to ensure that devices are locked before they leave is that example of a discretionary action. So for both of these types, there are three subcategories of action, which is preventive, detective, and corrective. Preventive actions are designed to handle specific risks, like using encryption to protect data at rest if there were breaches or attacks. So this is a preventive nature. Detective is it's actively monitoring system to identify irregularities that could represent risk and that can be used to detect breaches or intrusions. And corrective is it helps admin to minimize the adverse effect of the security incident which has already happened. On the right hand side, it shows how it shows in the dashboard. Like you can see mandatory, discretionary. Under that, there are preventive, detective, and corrective, and how much point you can get for those actions. So with this, we are done with the compliance management capability in Microsoft, which is our subsection 1. Next subsection is information protection and governance capabilities of Microsoft 365. Let's look into that. So here we're going to first talk about data classification. To understand that, let's see what's Microsoft Information Protection, which is MIP. It discovers, classifies, and protects sensitive data and business critical content throughout its life cycle across your organization. And there is Microsoft Information Governance. It manages your content lifecycle using solution to import, store, and classify business critical data. So you can keep what you need and delete what you don't need. So these are just the definition. We are going to get into more details. So Microsoft classify data based upon sensitivity information types. So with Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, admins can identify and protect sensitivity information types. These are the set patterns that can be used to identify them. For example, an identification number in a region, country may be based on a specific pattern. The good thing is Microsoft 365 includes many built-in sensitive information type based on the pattern that are defined by a regular expression or a function. For example, credit card number, passport, bank account number, health service number. So for these, there is built-in sensitive information types already there. So we don't need to define those. We can directly use it out of the box. And data classification also support the ability to create custom sensitivity information types to address organization specific requirement. For example, your organization may need to create sensitive information type to represent employee ID or a project number. So those are like example of custom sensitivity information. Microsoft 365 also provide trainable classifiers, which automatically classifies the information. So trainable classifier uses AI and machine learning to intelligently classify your data. They're most useful classifying data unique to the organization, like specific kind of contract, invoices, or customer record. There are two types of classifiers available: pre-trained classifier, custom trained classifier. As the name says, pre-trained classifier are already created and pre-trained by Microsoft to classify many type of data without training them. But custom trainable classifier, those are the one which we can train based on our specific data, and those can be trained to classify the unclassified data. Point to note, at this time, classifier only work with items that are in English and are not encrypted. Content Explorer is our next topic. Content Explorer is available on the tab in the data classification pane of Customer Center. It enables administrator to gain visibility into the content that has been summarized in the overview pane. It enables administrators to further drill down into items by allowing them to access and review scanned source content that's stored in a different kind of location, for example, Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. So as it is very powerful, the access to Content Explorer is highly restricted because it is possible to read the content of the scanned files. There are two roles that grant access to Content Explorer: Content Explorer List Viewer, Content Explorer Content Viewer. This is good to be remembered for the exam. So other than Content Explorer, there is an Activity Explorer. The Activity Explorer provides visibility into what content has been discovered or labeled and where that content is. It makes it possible to monitor what's being done with labeled content across the organization. For example, a file copied to a removable media. That's an activity done on the content. A file copied to a network share, a label applied, a label changed. All these activities you can explore. What is the benefit of that? The value of understanding what action has been taken with sensitive content is that admin can see if the control that has been already put in place, such as data loss prevention policies, are effective or not. For example, if it is discovered that the large number of items labeled highly confidential had suddenly been downgraded to public, admin can upgrade policy and act to restrict undesired behavior as a response. In Activity Explorer, you can view information about what users are doing with sensitive content. Admin uses information to enforce protective action for content through controls and policies. In the data classification, this is how it looks like. Activity Explorer. You can see in the graph it is showing file copy to clipboard, file copy to network share, etc. So whatever actions are happening or activities are happening on the content, you can see it here. Next is sensitivity levels. So sensitivity levels are available as part of information protection in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. It enables the labeling and protection of content without affecting the productivity and collaboration. With sensitivity levels, organization can decide on labels to apply on content such as email, document, much like different stamps are applied on the physical documents. These labels are customizable, clear text, and persistent. Once these are applied, these are stored in the metadata of the email or a document, and after that it moves along with the data itself. That means wherever the document is moving, the metadata moves with the document. One point to remember is each item that supports sensitivity level can only have one label applied to it at a given point of time. So there are different kind of usage of the sensitivity levels. For example, encrypt email only or both email or document. When a document or email is encrypted across, the access to the content is restricted. Or we can use to mark the content when Office apps are used. Marking the content includes adding watermark, headers, footers. We can apply labels automatically in Office or recommend a label. We can use it to protect content in containers such as sites and groups. We can use it to extend sensitivity labels to third-party apps and services, and also classify content without using any protection setting. So these are the different usage of sensitivity labels. So once sensitivity labels are created, they are published to user or group through label policies. Then the labels appear in Office apps for those users and group. Like Microsoft Word, if you are using, you will see a label. The label policy enable admin to choose a user and group that see the label, apply a default label. Example, for a particular group, whenever they create a document, it has a default label. Require justification for a label change. For example, you have a label put on a document and the user changes it. Then the admin can configure that a message asking why are you changing that, give the justification. Require user to apply a label. You can mandate labeling. Link user to custom help page. You can put a help page there so that if user has a question about the label, the user can click there and go to that custom help page to understand the label meaning, etc. Admin can also enable user to label and protect their file using Window File Explorer. But for that, you need to install Azure Information Protection Unified Labeling Client on Windows devices. Let's talk about retention policies and retention labels. Retention labels and policies help organization to manage and govern information by ensuring content is kept only for required time and then permanently deleted. There are many ways helps organization complying proactively with industry regulation and internal policies that require content to be kept for a minimum time. Sometimes we say this file or this type of file to be kept at least for a month before it is deleted. Reduce risk when there is digitation or security breach by permanently deleting old content that the organization is no longer required to keep. Ensure user work only with the content that's current and relevant to them. Because when very old content is deleted, so there are good chances that the latest content only is there with the user to work on. So this retention setting works with SharePoint, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, Yammer, and Exchange. Now, retention policies are used to assign the same retention settings to content at a site level or a mailbox level. A single policy can be applied to multiple locations or a specific location or user. Items inherit the retention setting from their container specified in the retention policies. Now, retention labels are used to assign retention setting at the item level. With policy, you can do at a container level, but at item level, you do using retention labels such as folder, document, or an email. An email or document can only have a single retention level assigned to it at a time. Like any other level, a retention setting from retention level travel with the content if it moves to a different location because it's in the metadata. Admin can enable user to apply a retention level manually, or it can be applied automatically. A default level can be applied for the SharePoint document. Retention level support, depositioning, review to review the content before it's permanently deleted. Now, for example, if some document in a site to be kept for 5 years and some other document are kept for 10 years, then what you should do? Then you would need to apply a policy to SharePoint site with a retention period of 5 years, and you would then apply a retention label to the individual item with the retention setting for 10 years. That's how this can be done. Good to remember for the exam. Now, record management. Organization of all types require a management solution to manage regulatory, legal, or business critical records across their corporation. So that's where record management comes into picture. It helps an organization look after their legal obligation. It also helps them demonstrate compliance with the regulations and increase efficiency with the regular deposition of items that are no longer required to be kept, no longer of value, no longer required for business purpose. It provides following capabilities. We can label content as a record, migrating and managing retention plans with file manager, establishing retention and deletion policy within the record level, triggering event-based retention, reviewing and validating disposition, proofs or record deletion, exporting information about disposed items, setting specific permission for record management function in the organization. So once a item is defined as a record, there are a lot more additional things you can do using record management, which are good for regulations purposes. So when a content is labeled as a record, the following happens. Restrictions are put in place to block certain activities. Activities are logged. Proof of disposition is kept at the end of the retention period. So items such as document or email can be marked as a record based upon their retention labels. Item may be marked as a record, but they can also be shown as a regulatory record. If you see on the right hand side, when you're marking an item, you have two options: mark item as a record, mark item as a regulatory record. So what is regulatory record? Regulatory record provides other control and restrictions, such as a regulatory level cannot be removed when an item has been marked as a regulatory record. The retention period cannot be made shorter after labels has been applied as a regulatory record. So these are two additional controls are placed when a item is marked as a regulatory record. The most important difference is that if the content has been marked as a regulatory record, nobody, even a global admin, can remove the label. So marking an item as a regulatory record has irreversible consequences and should only be used when necessary. As a result, this option isn't available by default and has to be enabled by admin using PowerShell. It's very powerful when you mark some item as a regulatory record. Now, the last topic in this section is describe data loss prevention. Data loss can harm the organization, customer, business purpose, and organization itself. So organization need to prevent data loss by detecting risky behavior and preventing sensitive information from being shared inappropriately. So admin can use data loss prevention policies available in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. So this data loss prevention help admin with identify, monitor, and automatically protect sensitive information across Microsoft 365, help user learn how to compliance work without interrupting their workflow. For example, if user try to share a document containing sensitive information, a DLP policy can send them an email notification and show them a policy tip. The admin can view DLP reports showing content that matches the organization DLP policies. The DLP policy protect content through enforcement of rules that consist of condition, action, and location. Conditions that the content must match before the rule is enforced. Action that the admin wants the rule to take automatically when the content matches a condition. And location where the policy will be applied, such as Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and more. So this is how DLP helps for data loss prevention. Now this policy could have multiple rules, one or more rule, and as shown in the diagram. So rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 could have their own conditions and actions. The rules inside the policies are prioritized in how they are implemented. For example, in this diagram, rule 1 will be prioritized before rule 2 and so on. So with this, we are done with the second subsection. Now we will look into insider risk capabilities in Microsoft 365. Insider risk management is a solution in Microsoft 365 that helps minimize internal risk by enabling an organization to detect, investigate, and act on risky and malicious activities. It is available in 365 Compliance Center. Internal risks from employees are, for example, leak of sensitive information, confidentiality violation, IP theft, fraud, inside training, regulatory compliance violation, etc. So insider risk management is centered around some principles which are transparency, configurable, integrated, and actionable. So transparency means balance user privacy versus organization risk with the privacy by design architecture. It should be configurable policies based on industry, geography, and business group. It should be integrated workflow across Microsoft 365 compliance solution, and it provides insights to enable user notification, data investigation, and user investigation. So these are the principles we should remember for the exam. Insider risk management workflow. Insider risk management helps organization to identify, investigate, and address internal risks with focused policies templates, comprehensive activity signal across Microsoft 365, and a flexible workflow. Organization can take advantage of actionable insight to help identify and resolve risky behavior quickly. As shown in the diagram below, we have policies. Based on policies, alerts are generated and inside risk case is created under which it is triaged, investigated, and actions are taken. This happens with the collaboration across compliance, human resource, legal, and security teams. So as the usage at the bottom, as it is written, insider risk management can help you detect, investigate, and take action to mitigate internal risk in your organization in several common scenarios. These scenarios include data theft by employee, the unintentional leak of confidential information, offensive behavior, and more. Next topic is communication compliance. Communication compliance in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center helps minimize communication risk by enabling organization to detect, capture, and take remediation actions for inappropriate messages. So for that, predefined and custom policies in communication compliance makes it possible to scan internal and external communication for policies matches so that they can be examined by chosen reviewers. Identifying and resolving compliance issue with communication compliance uses the following workflow. So we configure it. In this step, admin identify compliance requirement and then investigate. Admin looks deeper into the issues detected when matching your compliance policies and then remediate. Option include for remediation are resolving an alert, tagging a message, notifying the user, escalating to another reviewer, making an alert as a false positive, removing a message in team, escalating for investigation. So this could be the possible remediation. And monitor, as it's shown in the diagram. It continuously monitor and keep track of the compliance issues. So what are the uses of communication compliance? Some important compliance areas where it can assist includes corporate policies. Sometimes there are corporate policies that users have to follow, like users and ethical standard in their day-to-day business communication. We can make sure by this there is no offensive language or harassment is there in the communication. Second is risk management, where we want to see the communication compliance for unauthorized communication about projects that are considered to be confidential, such as acquisition, earning disclosure, or etc. And regulatory compliance to check things which are regulatory compliance, for example, inside trading, money laundering, or bribery. Any communication related to that could be alerted. These are use cases are good for the exam. Next, let's talk about information barriers. Sometimes organization might want to restrict communication between some groups to avoid a conflict of interest from occurring in the organization. So to restrict communication between certain people to safeguard internal information. With information barrier, this is possible. It is important to note that information barriers only support two-way restriction. You cannot stop one group receive information from other unless the other group is also stopped. Information barriers are policies that admin can configure to prevent individual or group from communication with each other. These are supported in Microsoft Teams, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and more. So, for example, information barrier in Microsoft Teams determine and prevent the following kind of unauthorized communication. Searching for a user. You can have this applied so that one department cannot search a user from the other department. Adding a team member, starting a chat session with someone, starting a group chat, inviting someone to join a meeting, sharing a screen, placing a call, sharing a file with other user, accessing to file through sharing link. All this can be controlled by information barrier. Now let's talk about next one, which is privileged access management. Privileged access management allows granular access control over privileged admin tasks in Microsoft 365. It can help protect organization from breaches that uses existing privileged admin account withstanding access to sensitive data or access to critical configuration setting. So it works on the zero standing policy. That means give minimum permissions to admin only when it is needed. Any user who needs privileged access must request permission for access and will receive only the level of access they need just when they need, and will just enough access do the job at the hand. So zero standing access provides a layer of protection against standing administrator access vulnerabilities. So if you give an admin access for some time and then don't worry about taking it back, there are chances that it could be misused. So with this zero standing access, it is given only for a very short amount of time when the work can be done and it will be immediately revoked. That's called just-in-time access to complete elevated and privileged tasks through high scoped and time-bound approval workflow defined below. When I configure a privileged access policies, then access request, user requests the access, then access approval happens, then access processing happen for the approved request. The task is processed. The approval is checked against the privileged access policies and the processed by Microsoft. And all activities for the task is logged in Security and Compliance Center. So what is the difference between privileged access management and privileged identity management? This is important to remember. Privileged access management is defined and scoped at a task level, while Azure AD, privileged identity management, applies protection at a role level with the ability to execute multiple tasks. So privileged access management, that's why it is mentioned, it is more granular level. It's a granular access control compared to privileged identity management, which is role level and can do multiple tasks. Now next we are going to talk about customer logbox. These are like special case. Occasionally an organization might need Microsoft engineers help to help troubleshoot and fix problem. So this requires Microsoft engineer to access the organization content to determine the root cause and fix the problem. So there is a workflow for that is called customer logbox. It ensures that Microsoft cannot access the content to perform a service operation without explicit approval. Customer lockbox brings the organization into approval workflow for requests to access their content. It supports requests to access data in the Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, and SharePoint Online. As you can see on the right hand side, the customer, it submits a request to Microsoft Engineer, then it goes to Lockbox Engineer, then it goes to Microsoft Manager, it goes to customer, then customer approves it. So there is a workflow defined, then only Microsoft engineers can access content on the customer's system. So now what is the difference between customer lockbox versus privileged access management? This kind of question could be there. Now customer lockbox allows the level of access control for organization when Microsoft accesses the data. It is specific when Microsoft accesses that data. Whereas privileged access management allows granular access control within an organization for all Microsoft 365 privileged tasks. So that's the difference. So this is the last topic in this subsection. With this, we are done with insider risk capabilities in Microsoft 365. Next, we are going to talk about eDiscovery and audit capabilities of Microsoft 365. So sometime a company may become involved in licitations, and need to find electronic information to be used as evidence. So eDiscovery or electronic discovery can be used to search for content in Exchange Online mailboxes, Microsoft 365 groups, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive for business sites, Skype, and DMR, etc. to fulfill that requirement. Now, there is a content search tool for that. It is accessible from the Compliance Center in Office 365. It enables search for in-place items such as email, document, instant messaging, conversation in your organization. Search for items supported following services, as we already mentioned. Then who has this access, the roles, to have access to the content search page, to run searches and preview and export result, and admin, compliance officer, or eDiscovery management must be a member of the eDiscovery manage role group in the security and compliance center. Running a search. To start using content search tool, you must choose content location to search and configure a keyword query to find specific item. Now, once the search is done, you can complete certain actions on this content, which is, for example, you can export or download the result to your local computer. If there is an email-based attack, you can delete the result of a search from users' mailboxes. To make it easy, there are scripting options. You can also use scripting for advanced scenarios. Microsoft created a number of security and compliance center PowerShell scripts to help complete complex content search related tasks. This could be search specific mailbox and site folder, search the mailbox and OneDrive location for a list of users, create, report on, or delete multiple searches to quickly and efficiently identify and cull search result data, clone a content search, etc. So these are the scripts there, and you can also customize and make your own scripts, which helps you to quickly search the data and export or download. Now, Core eDiscovery in Microsoft 365 provides a basic tool that organization can use to search and export content in Microsoft 365. You can search it and you can export it. To access Core Discovery or to be added to a member of Core Discovery, a user must be assigned an appropriate permission. Specifically, a user must be added as a member of eDiscovery Manager role group. You start by creating a discovery case from Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. You can assign members to the case. From that point, the case will be displayed in eDiscovery page and user can step through the workflow. The workflow is shown below. First is creating holds. Second is searching for the content and exporting and downloading search result. Looking into those three steps, first we create an eDiscovery hold. You can use an eDiscovery case to create a hold to preserve content that might be relevant to the case, because you don't want the data to be deleted while you are in a process of downloading it. So you put a hold there. You can put a hold on Exchange mailboxes or OneDrive for business account or people you are investigating in the case. You can also place a hold on a mailbox and site that are associated with Microsoft Teams, Office 365 group, and Yammer group. One point to remember that it may take up to 24 hours after you create the hold for it to take effect. So what content do you put on hold? You have two options. You can create an infinite hold where all the content in the specified location is placed on hold, or you can create a query based hold where the content in the specific location that matches the result is placed on hold. You can specify a date range to be preserved, or you can hold all content in the specific location regardless of when it was sent, received, or created. So this is how you identify what to hold and you put a hold in the first step. Then you search the content and finally you export content from the case. So mailbox items are downloaded in PST file or an individual message. Content from SharePoint, OneDrive, or business sites, etc. could be downloaded as a CSV file. You can export result of both single search or result from multiple searches associated with the case. That is where you export it. So these are the three steps: hold, search, and export. Now there are some specific action at a case level. You can close a case, reopen a case, or delete a case. When you close a case, any hold associated with it will be turned off. Once turned off, there is a 30-day grace period on the content location that were on hold. That means even after these are turned off, data is preserved for 30 days. Reopen. The main difference between active and closed case is that eDiscovery holds are turned off for a closed case. And when you reopen it, it does not automatically reinstate. You have to turn them on back. So this is a good point to remember for the exam. And delete, you can delete both active and closed cases. If you delete a case, all searches and export in that case are also deleted and case is removed from the list in the compliance center, and the deleted case cannot be reopened. Now next is advanced eDiscovery solution. So this is a new solution which provide end-to-end workflow to preserve, collect, review, analyze, and export content that's relevant to your organization internal or external investigation. It also let legal team manage the entire legal hold notification workflow to communicate with their custodian involved in this case. So it is more sophisticated than core eDiscovery. It's the advanced level as the name says. And the workflow has 5 steps. You start with the add a custodian to the case. Custodians are people who have administration control of the document or electronic files. Then you search custodial data, sources for relevant data, and then add data to review set, and then review analyze data in the review set, and then finally export the data and download the case data. So that is a workflow for advanced eDiscovery. Next in this section is core audit capabilities. So this allows organization to view user and admin activities through unified audit log. For example, did an admin reset a password? A unified audit log supports the search of many user and admin activities across different Microsoft services. So retention, when an audited activity is performed by user or admin, an audit record is generated and stored in the audit log for the organization. The length of the time is kept depends upon Office 365 or 365 enterprise subscription and specifically the type of the license that assigned to a specific user. For a code audit capabilities, the audit record is kept and searchable for 90 days. Searching the audit log requires the search capability to be turned on and for the user doing this search to be assigned to appropriate role. The search criteria can be configured based on activity, start date, end date, user, file, folder, or site. So it's a good tool to log what the admin and other users are doing, which is searchable for the audit purpose. And then second level in that, which is last topic in this subsection, is advanced level audit. So this is a more sophisticated to conduct forensic and compliance investigation by increasing audit log retention. There we had 90 days, here it is more than that. So this has long-term retention of audit log. Advanced audit keeps all Exchange, SharePoint, and Azure Activity Directive audit reports for 1 year. Microsoft now even have the capability to keep log for 10 years. Retaining audit logs for 10 years requires an additional add-on license, but you can keep for 10 years. And it also provides access to crucial events of investigation. For example, mail item access. So when the mail was sent, when the mail was read, and there is a special category sent, like when it sends on email messages, what were the replies to an email messages when it was forwarded as an email message. So it provides access to a lot more sophisticated data for forensic and compliance investigations. And also it provides high bandwidth access to Office 365 management activity API. Compared to normal core audit, advanced audit provide you a lot more bandwidth to access a large amount of data. So with this, we are done with this subtopic. Next, we are going to cover the last subsection, which is resource governance capabilities in Azure. So how do we govern a resource? First, we have Azure Resource Log. So these logs are used to prevent a resource from being accidentally deleted or changed. Even with role-based access control policy in place, there are still risks that people with the correct level of access delete a critical resource. That's where Azure Resource Logs prevent user from accidentally deleting or modifying a critical resource. And it could be applied to a subscription level, a resource group, or at a resource level. The logs level can be set to two types: cannot delete, read only. When it is cannot delete, it could be read or modified, but it cannot be deleted. But when it is read only, then it cannot even be modified. It is just read only. And a resource can have more than one log. For example, a resource may have a read only log and a cannot delete log. When you apply a log at a parent scope, all resources within that scope inherit that log. Even resources you add later inherit the log from the parent. Another point to remember is the most restrictive log in the inheritance take precedence. That means if you have a cannot delete log at the top, but at the bottom you have a read only log, the read only log will take precedence. And the log does not restrict how resources complete their function. If the lock is applied, changes to the actual resource are restricted, but resource operation are not restricted. For example, a read-only lock on an Azure SQL database logical server prevents deletion and modification of the server. However, it does not prevent you from creating, updating, and deleting data in the database on that server. So it is at a resource level. So this is Azure Resource Locks. Next is Azure Blueprints. So Azure Blueprint provide a way to define a repeatable set of Azure resources. Blueprint enables development team to rapidly provision and run new environments without the knowledge that they are in line with the organization compliance requirement. Team can also provision Azure resources across several subscriptions simultaneously. So Blueprint are declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resources template and other artifacts such as role assignment, policy assignment, ARM templates, and resource groups. With the blueprints, the relationship between blueprint definition, that is what should be deployed, and blueprint assessment, what was deployed, is preserved. This connection support improved tracking and auditing of deployments. So blueprints are a good way to do repeatable set of Azure resources, especially deployment. The next is Azure policies. The Azure policy is designed to help enforce standard and access compliance across your organization. Through this, you can get an aggregate view to help evaluate the overall state of environment, and you can drill down to per resource, per policy level granularity. You can also use capabilities like bulk remediation for existing resources and automatic remediation for new resources to resolve issues rapidly and effectively. Commonly used cases of Azure policy include implementing governance for resource consistency, regulatory compliance, security cost, and management, etc. So how the evaluation happen? The Azure policy evaluates whether the properties of the resource matches with business rule, and these business rules are in a JSON format and referred as a policy definition. The following events or times will trigger an evaluation. For example, a new resource has been created, deleted, or updated in a scope with the policy assignment. Sometime what happens, let's say the organization say, I want only this much configuration of a resource to be created or a VM to be created. So if someone try to create a higher power VM, the policy will get triggered and stop the person. So this is how the policy helps. Now finally, respond to non-compliance resources. If someone is non-compliant, as I mentioned, they can deny a change to a resource, log changes to a resource, alter the resource before or after a change, and deploy related compliance resource. So these are all action as a response to non-compliance resources could be taken if Azure policy is there. Okay, so with that we are done with the resource governance capabilities in Azure. Great. So with this we have completed all the 4 sections. Congratulations, you made it through. I hope this is useful and benefit for your exam. If you have any question, feel free to write comment and we'll get back. Again, congratulations for completing this course and best of luck for the exam. Thank you.